a member of the Boston Globe since 1981. Pleased to have on the Rich Eisen Show Dan Shaughnessy. How are you, Dan?
Good, Rich. How you doing?
So how are the folks in Boston taking the news that they all obviously were hoping for, that Dzhokhar Tsarnaev was found guilty on all 30 counts with which he was charged in conjunction with the Boston Marathon bombings? Dan?
Well, I think there was a general sense of, justice is served in the community, certainly, and quickly everybody goes to the next phase of this, which is what the jury's going to do regarding sentencing, and obviously that's the death penalty or life in prison. So that the narrative kind of switched to that right away as soon as everybody had the limited satisfaction of seeing him found guilty on all 30 counts.
Well, your newspaper's saying that they should not have the death penalty for him, that they should let him, as they said, rot in jail, and that as opposed to having endless appeals for him to try and avoid the death penalty. How do you think that that's playing amongst the population there in Boston?
This is kind of one of those issues. It's a hot button issue for people. It's very political and it's very emotional and there's great passion all around it. So I think most people come to it already having made up their minds about how they feel about the death penalty, and they stay in concert with that as they look at this case. There's certainly an element of out there which is, why show him the mercy he did not show the victims? And then you have folks who lean toward, let him just rot in jail and stick with himself, and that should be enough, and we're better than that kind of thing. So I think in our state, and with 12 people and needing unanimity for that, I would guess he would not get the death penalty here.
Marathon Day is 11 days away for the 2015 Boston Marathon. How do you think that day is going to go?
Well, last year, we really got a lot of the emotion out, and it was such a great thing to have people come back here who had not been allowed to finish in 2013, and a lot of those runners, there was great satisfaction for that. And it's still all about the victims and the people who lost limbs, lost family members, and just, had their lives, permanently altered. The event is permanently altered. It's, a lot of the innocence of it is gone. You have the security component, but I think it's such a indigenous to this area. It's so specific to Boston. Sox playing at 11 in the morning, and the Wellesley students lining up out there, and just all the traditions that go with it. It's nice to have those back, and I think people embrace it more now than they ever have. Yeah,
the photograph from this past winter or spring, based on how often it snowed there in the New England area, that photograph of somebody went out there and cleaned the snow off the finish line. That hit me. That hit my wife's from the area. That hit her. That hit her right in the gut, Dan. And just seeing, as you point out, that maybe more people are attuned to the marathon and what it means, and Patriots Day and the Sox playing in the morning. Just that photograph leaps to mind with you just telling me that story.
Yeah, I think it's true, and that space down there is forever changed, and it's a busy place. That's a real active spot there, and you're folks who go into town, you go by there all the time. It's not something you got to go out of your way to pass. So the finish line of the marathon is very much in the center of the walking around part of Boston.
Dan Shaughnessy joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. How do you think the Hernandez trial is going to finish up?
Boy, there was some. It was funny to have those. Odd, I should say, to have those things running in parallel lines here, and just front page every day about the two trials, and that one, of course, totally different and equally awful. And there was some sentiment late that the defense did a good job with a little surprise at the end, basically trying to, yes, put Aaron Hernandez in the place of the murders, but that he was just a bystander, and that these guys were all juiced up on PCP, whatever, and they killed Odin Lloyd, and then of course went and stayed at Aaron's house overnight and had a sleepover and ate sherbet or whatever they were doing. So
yeah, smoothies.
It's a tough sell, the defense's case on this, but again, you don't know with juries, and that one well, there's going to be another one, Rich, too. I mean, he's going to get hung with the double murder, which really is the precursor of this trial, because we think that, he was worried about Odin Lloyd talking about the other alleged crime when Odin Lloyd was killed.
Dan Shaughnessy of the Boston Globe joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's talk sports. The Patriots, as we all know, lost Revis. Stephen Ridley just signed with the Jets also. And Vince Wilfork is now a Houston Texan. It just seems that the coach and organization that does so well altering its roster week to week, depending on the opponent, is now going to have to do a year-to-year situation right now, altering its roster to get ready for another season. What are your thoughts on the Patriots post fourth championship of the Belichick era, getting set for 2015 with Brady once again?
It's almost like Belichick thrives on this. I mean, almost like he enjoys the challenge. I mean, that was pretty good having Browner and Revis back there, and it did change how they could approach things defensively, and it allowed them to win the Super Bowl, in my view, that and Pete Carroll making the worst call in the history of sports. So, yeah, I mean, but I think there's a challenge to going without and figuring out other ways to do it and maneuvering your 53-man roster, your salary cap. So here you go. And as you know, there's no sentimentality attached to it here. It could, you can go back to Richard Seymour, Malloy, Ty Law, Welker. It never ends particularly well, and the players kind of all understand that now. Even a guy like Wilfork sends a litany of love letters to the front office when they basically cut him loose. So that's understood, and everybody's on board with it. And of course, the softness of the AFC East enables them to go in knowing they're going to be in the playoffs with the first-round home game. It's unbelievable. I mean, and again, just look at the quarterbacks in that division. I'm sorry, I don't care. I know they're all beefed up and working at it, but it's a joke. And the Bills haven't been in the playoffs in this century, and the Dolphins have won, I think, one game in this century in the playoffs, and the Jets are the standard bearer. They've been the good one, and that's where they are. So it's just it's nice to have that when you're New England, knowing that going in, you're already in the second round at home.
What do you think of the Sox season? Just a couple games in, Dan.
They're better. We knew they were going to be better based on what they did with the payroll and the offense and bringing in Ramirez and Pablo. So and the pitching is suspect, but again, they're relying on a soft division. AL East is one of the worst in baseball now. That's a new wrinkle. That'll help them, and they should contend all year, or be a playoff contender. Absolutely.
They're almost spending as much money as the Evil Empire, Dan.
Absolutely. I mean, they try to separate themselves, but they are the old Yankees.
They are.
I mean, that's the myth of the little engine that could up here. No, they've blown through the luxury tax. They're at $200 million, and the money spent on the Cubans and the hitters, and it's a lot of investment. And they're completely transparent about it. This is what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, they're like the old Yankees, and the current Yankees are just old. Right, Dan? I mean, it
breaks my heart. I'm coming in there this weekend, so look forward to seeing that. But
right.
Yeah,
Tanaka's next start against the Red Sox, and that's going to be some good theater. That is going to be some good theater. The over/under, you think it's going to be less than 4 hours with the new speed-up rules? Baseball's already sending notices to players. May 1, they start fining players. We'll see if anybody's listening when the Yankees and Red Sox play a 9-inning game less than 3.5 hours even.
Yeah, and it's a Sunday night deal, and the Sox have to go to Boston and open in the afternoon the next day at home, their home opener. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it was amusing to me that you had Tom Werner put himself forward as a commissioner candidate worried about the length of games.
That's right.
His team is the worst offender, grinding out at bats and all the pride they take in that. So. The clock's there. I haven't really noticed it yet. I don't think anybody else has either.
Right. Last question for you, Dan Shaughnessy. The call to action we've had with many of our listeners and viewers today, based on watching Jack ace a par 3 hole yesterday at Augusta, about the best moment you've witnessed personally, and you have witnessed many. Which one stands out the most to you? Sports moment that you, with your own 2 Dan Shaughnessy eyes, witnessed?
Boy, it's almost the 04 Red Sox beating the Yankees. I guess it's not a moment. It's a 4-game comeback. Mm-hmm. That's the one that's always the best for me. I mean, I was at the Fisk home run game. If you need a single moment, I guess I'd go with that.
75, right?
75 for Fisk.
And him hitting the foul pole?
Yep, I was right out there with my sister in section 27.
You were?
Yeah.
What was that like, Dan? Seriously.
It was electric. That was a special time. You know, we were all just out of college, and the Sox were really young, and it was a big deal. And they didn't win the World Series.
No.
We remember that. But in that moment, the ball hit in the pole, and after midnight, the greatest World Series ever, all those Hall of Famers, it was really special.
Yeah, the big red machine. Good stuff. Stockton with the call. That's as good as it gets. Dan, thanks for calling in.
Take care, Rich.
You bet. That's Dan Shaughnessy, the Boston Globe.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.